Pain is one of life's greatest catalysts for transformation. When someone realizes you're not coming back, it's not just about losing you. It's about losing the comfort, security, and validation they once took for granted. That moment hits hard because it forces them to confront the truth. Their actions, their choices, and their mindset led to this. And now they have to deal with the consequence. At first, there's resistance. The mind doesn't want to accept it. It clings to hope, searching for loopholes, convincing itself that maybe, just maybe, things will go back to the way they were. This is human nature. We are wired to resist loss because loss means change, and change is uncomfortable. But the moment of realization, when the truth finally sinks in, is the moment of impact. And this impact, it can be the start of something powerful. There's a reason why some of the greatest personal transformations come from pain. When life is easy, when relationships are steady, and when things are predictable, there's no urgency to grow. Complacency takes over. But when a person is hit with the weight of irreversible loss, they are forced to look inward. No more distractions, no more excuses, just them and the reality they created. This is the moment where growth either happens or it doesn't. Some people will fall into victim mode. They'll blame everything but themselves. She overreacted. It wasn't that serious. She'll be back. They'll avoid accountability because facing it means acknowledging they had the power to prevent it, but they didn't. And let's be real, taking responsibility is hard. It requires a level of honesty that many people aren't willing to embrace. But for those who do, for those who sit in that pain, process it, and let it teach them something, they evolve. They see, maybe for the first time, where they went wrong. They understand that their patterns, their habits, and their mindset played a role in the outcome. And that awareness, that's the beginning of real change. The truth is, most people don't change when they should. They change when they have no other choice. And the moment someone realizes you're gone for good, it becomes that choice. They either become bitter, stuck in resentment and regret, or they take that pain and use it as fuel to become better. This is why pain is powerful, it's raw, it's real. It strips away the ego, the excuses, and the false narratives. When someone truly realizes that they've lost something valuable, they start to see themselves with new eyes. They start questioning who they are and why they behaved the way they did. This self-reflection can be brutal, but it is necessary. Growth isn't about punishment, it's about learning. Every mistake, every lost opportunity, and every heartbreak is a lesson waiting to be understood. And sometimes the hardest lessons come when we realize that we can't undo the past. That's when the real work begins. Because what happens next determines everything. Some people will stay stuck in regret, replaying moments, wishing they could go back. But others will take that realization and decide to change. They will step up, become more self-aware, and commit to never making the same mistakes again. That's when transformation happens. Not just on the surface, but deep within. Because here's the thing. Growth doesn't come from getting you back. It comes from understanding why they lost you in the first place. And once they grasp that, they have the potential to become a new version of themselves, one that doesn't repeat old patterns. But the most important part, you are not responsible for their growth. Your absence may be the trigger, but the journey is theirs. And whether they choose to evolve or stay the same is up to them. Because at the end of the day, you didn't leave to teach them a lesson. You left because you chose yourself. And that is the most powerful thing of all. At first, the mind refuses to accept reality. The moment someone realizes you're not coming back, their brain fights against it. It clings to hope, searching for signs that this isn't real, that maybe it's just a temporary situation, that somehow things will reset. This is human nature. Our minds are wired to protect us from pain. And one of the most common ways they do this is through denial. Denial feels safe. It's a buffer between a person and the truth they aren't ready to face. It allows them to believe that things aren't over, that there's still time to fix what's broken, that they'll wake up tomorrow and find a message from you, an apology, or a second chance. But as time passes, as the calls go unanswered and the realization begins to settle in, denial starts to crumble. And that's when the real weight of the situation hits. At this stage, emotions come in waves. One moment there's anger at you for leaving, anger at themselves for not doing more, anger at the situation for turning out the way it did. Then comes bargaining, the desperate attempt to convince themselves that if they say the right thing, do the right thing, or prove their worth, they can reverse the outcome. But deep down, something is shifting. A new reality is forming. And as much as they try to resist it, they are beginning to understand that this time it's different. Acceptance is painful. It means acknowledging that they have lost something they thought they would always have. It means realizing that their actions had consequences, that their behavior played a role, that they took for granted what they should have cherished. And nothing stings more than recognizing that it's too late to change the past. This is the moment of reckoning. Some will lash out, blaming you, blaming circumstances, blaming anything but themselves, because it's easier than taking responsibility. But others, those who truly want to grow, will sit with that discomfort. They will let themselves feel the full weight of what has happened, and in doing so, they will begin to transform. True change never happens in comfort. It happens when a person is forced to confront the parts of themselves they would rather ignore. And this moment, when they finally accept that you are not coming back, is the doorway to that transformation. They will start to see their patterns more clearly. They will begin to understand how their words and actions shape the outcome. And most importantly, they will realize that if they don't change, they will continue to repeat the same mistakes in the future. But the truth is, acceptance isn't a single moment. It's a process. There will be days when they feel like they've moved on, only to wake up the next morning drowning in regret. There will be moments of clarity, followed by moments of relapse, where they let themselves believe that maybe, just maybe, things could go back to the way they were. But eventually, reality wins. And when it does, they have a choice. Stay stuck in the past, or use this pain as fuel to become better. For many, this is the first time they truly see themselves. Without you there to reflect back their worth, they are forced to create it on their own. Without your reassurance, they must learn to navigate their emotions without external validation. And without the hope of reconciliation, they must find a new way forward. This isn't just about losing you. It's about losing the version of themselves that was dependent on you. And while that loss is painful, it is also an opportunity, because in the ashes of what was, there is space to build something new. Some will resist this. They will try to fill the void with distractions, rebound relationships, or unhealthy habits. They will do anything to avoid sitting in the silence and listening to what it has to teach them. But for those who are ready to face the truth, this is the beginning of something powerful. Because once a person fully accepts that you are not coming back, they are free. Free to reflect, free to grow, free to create a new version of themselves, one that no longer takes people for granted, one that communicates better, one that values connection in a way they never did before. And while it may take time, while they may stumble along the way, the shift has already begun. The moment they move from denial to acceptance, they stepped onto a new path. And whether they realize it now or later, that moment, the moment they accepted reality, was the moment they truly started to change. Pain is one of the greatest forces of transformation. It has the power to break someone down completely or to build them into something stronger than they ever thought possible. When someone realizes that you're not coming back, that realization comes with a flood of emotions, regret, anger, sadness, confusion. But beneath all of that, there is an opportunity. It is in that moment of deep pain that the possibility of true growth begins. At first, pain feels unbearable. It's a constant nagging presence, a weight in the chest that won't go away. Every song, every place, every routine reminds them of what they lost. The mind plays tricks, replaying old memories, imagining different endings, wondering what could have been done differently. This phase is intense because the brain is wired to avoid pain, to seek comfort, to escape. Some people will try to drown it out with distractions, throwing themselves into work, numbing themselves with temporary pleasures, jumping into something new to fill the void. But no matter how hard they run, the pain follows. It lingers in the quiet moments, in the space between distractions, waiting to be acknowledged. The truth is, pain isn't the enemy, it's a teacher. It forces reflection. It demands awareness. It shines a harsh light on all the things that were ignored, all the ways they could have been better, all the lessons they refused to learn before. And this is the crossroads. Some people will resist this lesson, blaming everything and everyone else, refusing to take accountability, staying stuck in old patterns. But those who truly want to grow, who want to evolve into something greater, will lean into the pain instead of running from it. Leaning into pain means asking the hard questions. Why did this happen? What could I have done differently? What parts of myself do I need to work on? At first, these questions are uncomfortable because they strip away the illusions, the excuses, the false narratives. They force a person to sit with their mistakes, their blind spots, their weaknesses. But in doing so, they also provide a roadmap for change. Because the moment someone takes full responsibility for their part in a loss, they gain control over their future. Transformation begins with discomfort. It is in the raw, unfiltered moments of pain that people start making decisions that change their lives. Maybe they realize they need to heal childhood wounds that have been affecting their relationships. Maybe they recognize toxic habits they've carried for years. Maybe they see for the first time how fear, insecurity, or ego led them to push away something valuable. And with this awareness comes the power to make different choices. But transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, and it requires effort. It requires looking in the mirror and being honest. It requires discipline to break old patterns and replace them with healthier ones. It requires commitment to becoming a version of themselves that won't make the same mistakes again. This isn't easy, but it's necessary, because without change, history repeats itself. This is why pain is a gift. It doesn't feel like it in the moment, but for those willing to embrace it, it becomes the fuel for a personal breakthrough. Some of the strongest, most successful, most self-aware people in the world didn't get there because life was easy. They got there because they faced loss, rejection, failure, and instead of letting it destroy them, they used it to build themselves up. There will be moments of weakness, moments where the pain feels like too much, moments where going back to what's familiar seems easier than moving forward. But the real breakthrough comes when a person decides that the version of themselves that made the mistakes, that took things for granted, that didn't see clearly, is no longer the version they want to be. That's when change becomes permanent. By the time they come out on the other side, they won't be the same person anymore. They will have grown, evolved, and built a new foundation for themselves. One that doesn't rely on external validation. One that doesn't need someone else to complete them. One that is rooted in self-awareness, self-respect, and self-growth. And when that happens, they won't just be moving on from the loss. They'll be stepping into a whole new version of themselves. One that is stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the future. When someone realizes you're not coming back, there's an immediate void. It's not just about losing you, it's about losing the sense of security, validation, and comfort they associated with you. For a long time, they may have relied on your presence to fill certain emotional gaps, to reassure them, to give them a sense of purpose. But when that's gone, they are left with the uncomfortable truth. They now have to build a life that is fulfilling on its own without depending on someone else to complete it. This realization is overwhelming at first. The human mind naturally seeks connection and attachment. From childhood, we are conditioned to look outside ourselves for approval and meaning. Relationships, friendships, and external achievements become markers of our self-worth. But the problem is, when a person's sense of self is tied to another, they are never truly in control. Their happiness becomes dependent on something outside of themselves, and when that external factor is taken away, they feel lost. At first, they may resist this new reality. They might search for ways to fill the gap quickly, jumping into another relationship, surrounding themselves with distractions, or seeking temporary validation from others. Anything to avoid the silence. Anything to avoid the feeling of being alone with their thoughts. But no matter how much they try to escape it, the truth remains. Fulfillment cannot be outsourced. It has to be built from within. This is where real growth begins. There comes a point when they start to understand that no amount of external validation will truly replace the sense of self-worth that comes from within. That's when they are faced with a choice. Keep chasing temporary fixes or start doing the real work of building a fulfilling life on their own. Building a life that doesn't rely on others for fulfillment means shifting the focus inward. It means looking at what truly brings meaning beyond relationships or external approval. What are their passions? What excites them? What makes them feel alive? These are the questions that start to take shape in the absence of the relationship. Instead of searching for someone else to provide happiness, they begin the process of creating it themselves. At first, it's uncomfortable. It requires self-reflection, patience, and discipline. It's much easier to rely on another person for emotional stability than to build it from the ground up. But those who commit to this journey start to notice a shift. They develop new routines, set personal goals, and begin to invest in their own growth. They start taking care of their physical and mental health, not because they want to impress someone else, but because they recognize their own worth. They pursue new interests, challenge themselves, and start living life with intention. As this transformation unfolds, something incredible happens. They stop needing someone else to complete them. They stop looking for validation in relationships, in social media, in external praise. They realize that their value was never tied to someone else's presence. It was always within them. And when they reach this point, they no longer see relationships as something to fill a void, but as something to complement the life they've already built. This kind of self-sufficiency is rare, but it is powerful. It allows a person to enter relationships from a place of abundance rather than need. They are no longer choosing a partner out of loneliness or insecurity, but because they genuinely want to share their life, not because they need someone to complete it. This shift changes everything. For some, this realization comes too late. By the time they understand that they needed to build a life that was fulfilling on its own, the person they lost has already moved on. That's the hard truth. But for those who take this lesson to heart, it shapes their future in ways they never expected. They become more independent, more confident, more at peace with themselves, and the next time they enter a relationship, they do so as whole individuals, not as people searching for someone else to make them feel whole. Ultimately, the most important relationship anyone will ever have is the one they have with themselves. The moment someone stops relying on others for fulfillment, they take full ownership of their happiness. They become the kind of person who attracts healthy relationships, who thrives in solitude, and who moves through life with a deep sense of purpose. And that is the real breakthrough. Not just moving on, but leveling up in every way possible.